Okay, a little change of pace now. You heard from the four of the Navy tail hookers. Our next speaker is a native of Detroit. He attended the University of Detroit, a degree in civil engineering. He received his United States Air Force wings in 1962. After that, he also flew for United Airlines and was a retired captain for United Airlines after serving 31 years as a commercial airline pilot. A docent since 1999. Great pleasure introducing Captain Don Merucci, United States Air Force.
Thank you, Dale, and welcome aboard. Thank you for attending the Living Ship Days of the Hornet. Again, my name is Don Merucci. I am the lone non-naval pilot, and as such, you can't pin any of those carrier landings on me. That county would never fit. I received my commission in the U.S. Air Force through the ROTC program, and along with a degree in civil engineering. During that time, I received 40 hours of civilian light plane training to see whether, in the advanced course, to see whether I had any aptitude for flying. You know, when the propeller started turning, I didn't get airsick, so that qualified me. I received my formal Air Force flight training at Vance Air Force Base, Enid, Oklahoma. I was one of 36 members of Class 63 Alpha. 31 of us made it, and we received our wings in July 1962. Our flight training was a 12-month course consisting of approximately 250 hours of in-flight training and hours of classroom instruction. The first 2 weeks were a combination of classroom and military indoctrination. We were then assigned to an instructor. In the next 11 months, the days were all combination of flying and class study. They even tried to teach us celestial navigation. The primary flight training was in the T-37, a twin-jet, side-by-side aircraft manufactured by the Cessna Corporation. And the basic was in the T-33, which is a two-seat version of Lockheed's combat aircraft, the F-80. At Vance, I was single, so I lived in the bachelor's officers' quarters, which was conveniently located right behind the officers' club. I had a roommate who was a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and decided to come over to the other side. After receiving our wings, we were trained in our new aircraft at the assigned bases. For me, that was up at McClellan Air Force Base, up the road in Sacramento. My only military aircraft, other than flight training, was the Lockheed Constellation. I flew this aircraft more than 4,000 hours in just 4 years, and almost a third of that asleep. The Connie was an AEWNC, that's an airborne early warning and control aircraft, as well as a mobile radar station. The mobile radar station concept was tested by landing at Half Moon Bay Airport one day and sitting on the ground tracking local traffic. It worked, but we were never called again to do that. I saw action off of Cuba during the missile crisis there. Our job was to track the U-2 spy plane as it circled the island, taking pictures of the construction of the missile sites. I also had one short temporary duty assignment out of Iceland, tracking fighters flying home over the North Atlantic. And of course, there was that balmy Southeast Asia. There we were the ultimate multitaskers. Our job was to be a MIG watch, a radio relay, monitor location of the air tanker, provide assistance to any pilot in harm's way, and guidance to rescue personnel. All this was done barely over the Gulf of Tonkin at 50 to 75 feet, 175 knots, doors and overwing hatches open, heat exchangers at full capacity, and still about 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the aircraft. That's the same way we operated off of Cuba. My main activity was the protection of our western coast from invading Russians. Well, I never caught any. We just got some sleepy airline pilots who missed their radius time. The Connie held a crew of 18 and was loaded with 6 tons of radar and communication gear and carried 8,000 gallons of gasoline. Our normal mission was to fly out to the Pacific Ocean to one of 5 stations between the borders of Canada and Mexico, and then bore holes in the sky at max endurance power and altitudes of 10,000 to 15,000 feet until we had just enough fuel to come back home safely. There were only 2 pilots on board the crew, so and our missions were usually about 14 hours long. Luckily, we didn't have in-flight refueling capability. When we left the coast, one of the pilots left the cockpit and went back to eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We usually carried at least 2 meals for each of us that we could heat up in our galley, and rest up for his 3-hour shift at the controls. That's why I said I almost had 1/3 of my Connie time asleep. Luckily, she had a really great autopilot. One of the activities during these long hours was joint exercises. Air Force and Navy flyers practicing radar-directed intercepts on unfriendlies. The Air Force flyers were ready to head toward home and dry land when their fuel got down to about half. But the Navy guys were much more eager and would usually try more runs if asked. I guess they always thought they had a carrier handy somewhere. I have no real war stories to tell, some humorous incidents though. In Vietnam, on our way out to our mission area, we would wave at the sailors lining the carrier flight decks. Our altitude of 50 feet made it almost possible to see their incredulous expressions as we flew by. One day, we picked up an F-4 pilot during a fuel stop at Da Nang. The F-4 were our fighter cover while we were over the Gulf. He wanted to see what we did for those 8 or so hours down there. The F-4 driver, as he left the aircraft back at Da Nang, vowed to warn any and all to keep away from us. We were nuts to do that kind of thing. A couple of years ago, I was conducting a Hornet tour, which included the Combat Information Center, the CIC. In that group were 4 handsome young men, crew members from a Russian cruiser that was paying a visit to San Francisco. I went on to explain that the airplane I flew in the Air Force contained an airborne version of the CIC, and we were out there looking for Russians. There was no reaction from them, but later I thought to myself, it could have been their grandfathers I was looking for. One thing I hope you come away with from this hour, we were not just a bunch of pretty faces up there. Thank you very much for attending.